Welcome Trinidad and Tobago to our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Joseph Lopez. Let's take a look at the headlines. The Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs announces plans to establish a mineral ranger squad to eliminate illegal quarrying activities. The Minister of Finance and the Economy moves to ensure that outstanding payments to Hindu Credit Union depositors be paid by year-end. And the first of several public consultations on the establishment of the National Commission for Women's Empowerment and Gender Equality gets underway. Thank you so much for joining us. Top of the news. Government is seeking to establish a mineral ranger squad in light of heightened illegal quarrying activity. Energy Minister Kevin Ramnarine says his ministry will establish this body through the cooperation of the National Security Ministry, as it seeks to impose stiffer penalties for persons caught engaging in illegal quarrying activity and through legislative amendments to the Minerals Act.
Government is seeking stiffer penalties for persons found engaging in illegal quarrying. Energy Minister Kevin Ramnarine, speaking to members of the media during this week's post-cabinet briefing, says legislative changes will be made to the Minerals Act to incorporate several other acts. These include the Harmonization of State Lands Act, Highways Act, Water and Sewerage Act, Asphalt Industry Regulation Act, and Larceny Act.
The legislative amendments which are being proposed in the report which was accepted by Cabinet will allow for more efficient enforcement action, utilizing powers of arrest without warrant, powers of seizure with and without warrants in certain circumstances, shifting of the burden of proof as regards mining offences, powers of forfeiture that are directed at the core of the wrongdoing, increased penalties for individuals as regards both fines and imprisonment, greater penalties for companies with regard to fines, attaching liability to directors of mining companies, and placing some mining offences in the category of indictable offences.
The report issued to Cabinet states that over 150,000 TT dollars per day can be paid to illegal quarries for aggregating, which, according to the law, requires payment of royalties to government for the conducting of this activity. The minister says the proposed changes include the establishment of a policing body to monitor these illegal activities.
The report also proposes the establishment of a minerals ranger squad to assist in the preservation of the state's minerals assets through surveillance and investigations. And it also proposes increased and enhanced collaboration between state agencies, including the Ministries of Energy, National Security, State Lands Department, and the Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources.
Minister Ramnarine says the urgent need to make these legislative changes come following heightened reports of illegal quarrying happening in key areas in Trinidad.
We've been getting increased reports with an increasing frequency at the Ministry of illegal mining activity taking place around the country. When we get those reports, we investigate, we work with the police and so on. As recent as the 1st of May, which is just 2.5 weeks ago, there was a joint ministry, EMA, police, State Lands, Commissioner of State Lands exercise in the Wallerfield area. And the report submitted to me is that coming out of that, one person was arrested and equipment was seized. So, but what has happened is that this committee in particular has identified that there's a weakness with regard to the enforcement of the existing law under the Minerals Act, and these are some of the recommendations that are coming forward to us.
Kimbram Calawan, News 4.
Finance Minister Larry Hawaii is assuring depositors of the now-defunct Hindu Credit Union that they will receive their outstanding payments before year's end. The minister says this will be facilitated by legislation which will be laid in Parliament in the coming days.
Depositors at the defunct Hindu Credit Union will be paid out by the end of this year. Finance Minister Larry Hawaii made a disclosure during this weekly post-cabinet media briefing where he noted that legislation will be taken to Parliament to ensure that this process is completed in the shortest possible time.
The remainder of those depositors who had, and shareholders who had deposits and shares in excess of 75,000 with the Hindu Credit Union, we expect that that process will commence shortly after the bill is proclaimed. So we expect certainly before the end of this year that all of that process would have been completed.
The minister provided a breakdown of how much has been paid so far to the over 147,000 depositors belonging to the HCU.
The Hindu Credit Union had approximately 147,000 depositors, with approximately, of whom approximately 19,000 have been paid to date, with a total value of $232 million. Those who had 75,000 or less comprised 146,000 of those depositors, and to date 17,871 have been paid, a total of $135 million.
He said some challenges were faced in getting those who had large sums of money despite notices placed in the daily newspapers.
Many of the depositors had very small deposits in the Hindu Credit Union, and notwithstanding the advertisements and so on to collect on the deposits that they had, some persons have not actually come in to receive their payment, perhaps because of the size of the deposit. I don't have a clear explanation as to why that is so. But of the total of 146,000, approximately 17,871 have received payments, have come in to collect their payments and have received payments.
In 2011, government gave the assurance that all payments would be made to the HCU depositors and shareholders. Kimberam Calawan, News 4.
More news after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The government is aggressively pursuing public input for the establishment of a Commission for Women's Empowerment and Gender Equality. Now, once established, the Commission is expected to raise the living standards of women in Trinidad and Tobago.
On Tuesday, the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Child Development held its first stakeholders consultation on the establishment of the National Commission for Women's Empowerment and Gender Equality. The event took place at a packed City Hall, San Fernando, and according to Permanent Secretary Sandra Jones, the participation of citizens is very important. She explained that the consultations would give the populace of Trinidad and Tobago the opportunity to have their voices heard on a national level. The Permanent Secretary assured that the views and opinions of those who come forth will be taken into consideration and are the launching pads for the establishment of the National Commission.
The government of Trinidad and Tobago understands the need to promote, protect and safeguard the interests and rights of women and girls in our society. The government, through the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Child Development, along with the other governmental organizations, namely the Office of the Prime Minister, Ministry of the People and Social Development, Ministry of Legal Affairs, Ministry of Community Development, and the network of NGOs for the advancement of women and girls, have partnered together to create an interministerial committee. This committee has been mandated to conduct national consultations throughout Trinidad and Tobago. These consultations are critical for the establishment, composition, and mandate of the National Commission for Women's Empowerment and Gender Equity.
According to the Minister of State in the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Child Development, the consultation and the resultant commission would assist in raising the standard of living for the nation's women and the entire country as a whole. This, she says, will be done along the national policy framework, the 7 interconnected pillars of sustainable development, seeking prosperity for all.
The proposed Commission for Women's Empowerment and Gender Equity represent government's commitment to integrate women more equally in society and in the workplace, and to better utilize the human resource capital reposed in the women of our nation. The end result of this integration will ensure that equality of opportunity for women and girls in Trinidad and Tobago aligns with a reduction in poverty, better health, greater access to goods and services, more participation in governance, a more secure neighborhood, and a sustainable pattern of development for our nation as a whole.
There were two discussions during the course of the day. One gave a historical background on women's rights and issues, while the other presentation circled on global and regional issues. Following this, there were group discussions, with each group submitting reports on their views and comments.
It is in the holistic development of our young people that our women have always factored. And now, women must factor in the development of national policy, in the development and framing of legislation, in national strategic planning. Why? Because women understand many things that the traditional male leadership has never understood or have chosen to neglect sometimes.
According to the Honourable Minister, similar commissions are already established in Belize, Canada, India, Pakistan and Guyana to advance the rights and privilege of women. She said Trinidad and Tobago had previously established the National Commission on the Status of Women, which functioned from March 1974 to 1976. The ministry will continue to host national consultations throughout the country to ensure that the commission reflects the concerns of the population. Nikolai Edwards, News 4.
How India captivated the West was the theme discussed during observations for the UN World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development at the recent event hosted by the United Nations Association in Trinidad and Tobago. Keynote speaker His Excellency Gauri Shankar Gupta, High Commissioner of India to Trinidad and Tobago, took time to highlight the philosophical and religious foundations of the Indian subcontinent, cornerstones he believes may prove essential for achieving political unity in Western societies.
United Nations World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development was recently observed on May 21st. In 2001, UNESCO adopted the Universal Declaration on Cultural Diversity, and by December 2002, the United Nations General Assembly in its Resolution 57249 declared May 21st to be the official day of observance. With this, every member of the UN observes the day yearly. In Trinidad and Tobago for 2014, the United Nations Association of Trinidad and Tobago, a precursor of Friends of the UN in TNT, which promotes wider public understanding of the aims and activities of the UN system in TNT, held a forum in which His Excellency Gauri Shankar Gupta, High Commissioner of India to Trinidad and Tobago, was asked to speak on the topic How India Captivated the West. Beginning his presentation, His Excellency stated that the fundamentals of Indian civilization have remained essentially unaltered despite invasions and colonization over centuries. He explained those fundamentals to be Vedic knowledge, wisdom derived from holy literature venerated on the subcontinent.
Actual meaning of Ved means knowledge. Wisdom, another word. And it also says that you should not accept anything blindly by faith. You should not accept anything only because somebody is saying. You should be able to test that knowledge to your own satisfaction. Once you find it is right, then you accept it. And that is what the Vedic knowledge says. And actually, the Vedic knowledge does not propound any religion. It only tells you the science of life, the science of this universe. And that science had remained valid thousands of years back in time, is valid today, and that is what, in my view, has captivated the West.
His Excellency noted that adopting a spirit of non-violence was another reason why India prospered, explaining that Indian Emperor Ashoka, who lived in the 4th century BCE, embraced Buddhism as a doctrine which the emperor thought could serve as a cultural foundation for political unity. The doctrine of Buddhism is to be good and to do good. By encouraging people and organizations from around the world to take concrete action to support diversity, the UN aims to raise awareness worldwide about the importance of intercultural dialogue, diversity and inclusion. The international body hopes to build a world community of individuals committed to support diversity with real and everyday life gestures and to combat polarization and stereotypes to improve understanding and cooperation among people from different cultures. Felicia Wilson, More News 4.
Thank you, Felicia. Sports news is after the break. You're with News 4. Welcome back. 2012 Olympic javelin gold medalist Kishore Walcott is once again in winner's row. And on Thursday, Sports Minister Anil Roberts extended heartfelt congratulations on the victory at the IAAF World Challenge in Beijing, China. Open quote, "Indeed, it is a great pleasure to see our Olympic gold medalist once again mount the podium in the gold position after throwing what was his best in the competition throw since the London 2012. This is evidence of the young man's consistent dedication and focus. I also extend congratulations to his coach, Ishmael Mastrappa, who has created a program that saw Kishore fully recover from his injury last year and deliver an amazing performance in China. Kishore's performance is very encouraging in the lead-up of the 2014 Commonwealth Games in Scotland. Like the rest of the population, I will continue to monitor his progress and will ensure that the Ministry of Sport and the sports company stand ready to provide the necessary support for Kishore and all our national athletes to shine and succeed on the international stage." End quote. The Ministry of Sport and the sports company joined the minister in his congratulations to Kishore Walcott and Ishmael Mastrappa. We wish them both the very best for the remainder of the 2014 track and field season. We'll take a short break. More news when we return. Welcome back. After years of historical research and dedication, one government minister has authored a book on his family's lineage. The book has been well received by his colleagues, researchers and academics alike.
Minister of Food Production, Senator the Honorable Devan Maharaj, can now add author to his name. On Wednesday at the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus, the Honorable Minister launched his book entitled The Line of My People. While the book explores the genealogy of the minister, according to campus principal Professor Clement Sangat, it also contributes to the historical literature on the history and evolution of the Indian community in Trinidad and Tobago.
This book launch comes at a very special juncture in the history of our country, as Trinidad and Tobago celebrates its 169th Indian Arrival Day next week on the 30th of May. Ladies and gentlemen, as time passes and we grow older, we often become more deeply interested in our roots, in tracing our ancestry, and trying to find out a little bit more about what shaped us, what helped us to make us what we are. Typically, our families hold the answers to these questions, and it is to them we must turn first. And I have often been telling my mother, who is much more than 80, nearly 90, to write her story. Like many, therefore, Minister Maharaj embarked upon a journey to explore his genealogy, and as the title of his book suggests, The Line of His People. I cannot help but commend you, Mr. Maharaj. I have looked through your book. It's a labor of love. I'm pleased you have done it, and it'd be wonderful if more can do the same.
Senator Maharaj spoke of what sparked his interest in learning of his ancestry. He stated that it was never his intention to publish a book, as he wrote initially for the sole benefit of his family.
This book, when I started it and putting it together, is a process that which I started when I was about 15 or 16 years old. And I remember when me and my sister Vidya sat in the gallery in Susano Street, and I started to talk to my grandfather and asking him about his mother and father and his grandfather and who was from India, and writing it down at that point in time. Then I went to my grandmother, who is here with us at 87 years old, and she started to give me about her father, Benny Madhu Singh, who was from Garden Village, Aruka.
It was from here that the story began to unfold and led to his most recent works.
This story really is a story of all Trinidadians, but in particular the Indo-Trinidadian experience. But all Trinidadians share this history, and it's this history that we have in Trinidad that is soon and fast disappearing.
There were several speakers at the event who were inspired to also share their stories while commenting on the relevance of the book. There were even a few passionate calls for more persons to enter the field of genealogy so that greater advancements could be made in determining lineage. In giving his review of the book, historian, researcher and columnist Angelo Bissessa Singh expressed the connection he felt to the book while reading it.
The layout is excellent. The pre-production, which I understand owes much to Mrs. Maharaj, is second to none. But there are chapters in this book that speak to me very, very loudly. They reach deep into my psyche. And one of those is the paternal line of Senator Maharaj, particularly Bihari Maharaj. It focuses on oral history. And as the sage Shamsuddin has said, we must talk to our ancestors. We must talk to our old people. Do not let them die without their stories being told. There is one line in particular. Mr. Badlu told me he knew Bihari as a boy growing up in Plummitan. He gave me an interesting insight into this ancestor. When I first told Mr. Badlu that I was a descendant of Bihari Maharaj, he instantly replied that I was from good stock. And that is its own reward for all the hard work that you have done, sir.
The Honourable Minister presented copies of his book to the University of the West Indies, NALIS and the Indian Caribbean Museum. Nikolai Edwards, News 4.
And that's how we wrap up this edition of our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. Remember, you can view a repeat of our newscast weekdays at 6 a.m. and feel free to visit our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/OurTV4. I'm Joseph Lopez. Thank you for watching.